How's everybody doing? Wide awake, ready? Day 3. Maybe a few Jaeger heads in the room, maybe? Where's my cup of coffee? Anyway, it was a great night. Do appreciate Jägermeister for helping us celebrate the connections that we're all making here in this weekend, and it's going to be a fantastic day today, continuing a lot of the dialogue, having the workshops, and then at the end, being able to kind of wrap a lot of this together as we look forward to where this organization and where this, these connections and networking take us next as we continue to grow. So I'm really excited about this. Just briefly, I'm Rob LaRue. I sit on the board of directors for the foundation, and I would argue, there may be others that argue against me, that I am the #1 fan of this organization. I waited decades for this type of group to get started, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. It's also my pleasure this morning to introduce a trailblazer in agriculture, who's also a friend of mine, Ben Thomas. Ben grew up on a farm in West Texas. He then went off to school. He has done a number of things. You'll check out his full bio in the app on your speakers, but just a couple of things. He ultimately landed senior positions as a counsel and an ag advisor in the Senate, including Senator Max Baucus from Montana. He has served in senior leadership positions down at USDA, and most recently was appointed the state director of the Department of Agriculture in Montana. The reason why that is noteworthy is all during this time, he has been authentic to himself and led the life that he, and has been true to himself and has followed his passions in agriculture. And Ben holds the distinction right now of being our nation's first head of a state Department of Agriculture and openly gay. So please welcome Ben Thomas.
The 2014 Farm Bill and the 2013 Farm Bill, and whatever it was we tried to do in 2012. I don't remember what we called that at the time. So I'm Ben. Great to meet all of you. A little off topic, I'm buying a house right now. It's very exciting for me. It's my first house. I'm calling it a cute mountain home in the South Hills of Helena. Closing next week, and if you had told me 15 or 20 years ago that I would be buying my first home in Helena, Montana, of all places, I would have laughed it off. And if you had told me that someday the governor of Montana would call me and invite me to be a part of his cabinet and lead the Department of Agriculture, I just wouldn't have believed you, because it wouldn't have made sense. It didn't seem in the realm of possibilities of things that could happen or things that would even make me happy. So how did I get here? I grew up on a farm in the Texas Panhandle, cotton, peanut, melons, sunflower, very diversified farm, and I loved it. I loved being outdoors. I loved the strength of rural communities and the unique ways that lines between friends, family, and community are so often blurred in a beautiful and communal way. And I love the act of farming, of taking seed, putting it in the ground, cultivating it, watching it grow, and knowing that but for my hard work, the hard work I did alongside my mother, father, sister, brother, and in some years members of my community, that seed might not have sprouted at all. There's something so fulfilling about being a part of agriculture, something so foundational to modern civilization. But something changed. As I got older, I lost something. I lost a sense of belonging, and it was a very scary time. I eventually only understood that the only thing that had changed was me. I was changing, becoming more aware of my sexuality, and I struggled in those years to find out how to make it all compatible, how I could be gay openly, maybe start a family, but in this same community where I saw so much love but somehow lost the sense of belonging. It was a rough period of my life, as I'm sure many of you can relate to, but in my early teen years I made a very clear and conscious decision. I was going to focus on being a kid, focus on school, focus on enjoying my friends and family, but I was going to leave everything aside for now, and someday I knew it would get better. But I would have to leave. I would have to go somewhere else to be happy, to find that sense of belonging that I had lost. And I did that. I went off to college, although I came back to work on the farm in the summers and full-time for a bit after graduating, but eventually went to law school with the clear goal of removing myself from agriculture. I wanted to be some sort of big city lawyer or whatever that meant to me at the time. And I found out very quickly that I was just tied to agriculture. All these concepts I was learning, tort law, criminal, property, tax law, I was applying them back to agriculture, and often very specifically back to the family farm, things we had experienced or were experiencing. And eventually I embraced that. And I've been very fortunate to have a great career in public policy, both in the U.S. Senate and at USDA. And it was a kind of middle ground for me, a way to work on the issues I loved, but in a community where I had that belonging that I longed for so much. I love DC, I loved my time there. Once I hit the road to Montana, I haven't looked back. And in my job, I get to travel all over the state and visit these small rural communities that are so much like where I grew up. They're familiar to me, the people, the landscapes, but there was something unfamiliar to me. And that's that sense of belongingness that I didn't think was there before. I see it now. It's blossoming. Sometimes, in some places, it's at full bloom in places where I would have least have expected it. The value of inclusivity in rural America is growing, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It's a heartwarming thing to see. I was reflecting on this in one of the panels yesterday where the concept of visibility came up multiple times, how important it is and why it's important. And it struck me that that was really at the heart of what I was experiencing. Keep in mind, this was years before we had internet in rural America, or at least where I lived. We didn't have cable television. We had 2 to 4 network channels over antenna, depending on the weather. I didn't have a role model. I didn't know a single individual until I left the farm at 18 who was openly gay. There was no one I could point to and say, hey, that person did it, I can do it too. That person has embraced every part of who they are, and they still exist within their community and are embraced by it as well. And so it didn't even seem possible that I could have that. It wasn't on the list of things that could possibly happen in my life. As I welcome you to the second day of events, I want to say thank you to each of you in this room for your visibility, for being examples around the country to boys and girls growing up today of how we are and always have been part of those communities, and how recognizing and leaning into that fact makes us all stronger, better, and more resilient. And I also want to thank those who came before us, some of those who are in this room who stood up on their own, even when they were the only one visible, in a time when it was hardest. Those folks, stronger or more positive than I was when I left the farm, are the people who really paved the way for us to be here today. You're changing the face of rural America, and I thank you for it. So if you're ever in Helena or anywhere in Montana, let me know. Helena's a small town, Montana's a big state, and you'd be surprised at how far I drive to see a friendly face, so thanks.
Ben, just again, thank you for your service to American Ag, to Montana, and certainly to this community. Thank you so much.